We are live actually.
Oh, here we go. Nice.
Hello, Jamie. Welcome.
Hey, Ahmet. How's it going?
Well, most of you, of course, know Jamie under his alias called Blawan, and he's one of the most exciting artists when it comes to modular gear. I'm also looking really forward to it. He's also the founder of the Ternesk label, and also the founder, like the co-founder of the label Form. He's running together with his mate Pariah. And they're also actually a live act duo called Karen. And you're just playing exclusively live with Karen, right?
Yeah, only live. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, welcome, Jamie.
Great, thanks. Good to be here.
Yeah, nice to have you. So just give us a slight overview what you want to present today.
Okay, so this is not usually something I do in a gig situation. It's a little bit more simplified, but I kind of wanted to demonstrate basically with Modular and a couple of effects, delay and reverb, that you don't need that much to build.
So this is going to be a live jam session.
It's a jam. Everything I do in a live situation is usually a jam, or if it is a little bit prepared, it's always like a hybrid between a little bit prepared and a jam, because I think that's the best way to approach, especially with what I do with techno. It needs to be a little bit more freeform.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, and the whole basis, my whole basis of modular performance is not so much focusing on CV control and more using your hands, so playing it like an instrument. And the best way to do that is with a looper, which I have here.
Yeah, we were talking about that later on.
So
yes,
this is so I've talked about it a lot in other interviews about tech stuff. Is this?
I didn't see this actually in your setups before.
No, it's always there. I've used it for a long time. But it's the kind of the basis of the whole thing.
And you have a more hands-on setup, I see. Not so much menu diving or anything.
No.
So
it's basically, it's just one, like a kick, a bass oscillator and one oscillator.
Yeah, like your bass oscillator was, which one?
It's just an 808.
808, and then you're going to the rings and everything.
I put that into the rings to create some character, and then I just have all the melodies, pads and everything all come from one analog oscillator and some coloured filter. You'll hear it, but I just wanted to demonstrate basically that that when you approach a live set, the simpler your setup is, and the more you get to know that setup, the more complicated.
We said that less is more, and you get more creative when you have less gear.
And the stuff I'm going to play is not necessarily so complicated. I mean, it's techno anyway. I would advise anyone, if you do this, to do it live, have a partner with you. It's always good to do it with two people.
That's right, actually.
Because
playing live.
Yeah, because it gives you that time to step back and think, right, what am I going to do next? Yeah. Whereas if you were doing this solo, and especially improv solo, it's a heavy weight.
Solos, you have a tunnel vision, right? You have the tunnel vision, you have to go that road, there's no turning.
And it's a
when I also played live, I remember that,
It's a heavy burden to carry.
It's a heavy burden, that's right.
I'm just a basic demonstration about how you can create layer and structure with one oscillator and a kick.
Okay, cool. So we're going to talk later about how you really did that in more in detail. But first you're going to do a performance.
All right, cool.
Okay, looking
performance. So, right.
Take a chair.
Cool, thank you, Matt.
It was good.
So,
There are a lot of questions in the chat.
Yeah, I mean, as everything with improv, you never know how it goes. It's okay.
Now it was really good.
That's
it
the
was typical Blawan style. It doesn't matter what you're using, actually.
Yeah, I mean,
so first of all, maybe the most important thing, explain the chain of command, not chain of command. Explain the chain, how is it going?
Yeah, all right. So basically,
you can also stand if you
like.
It's
it doesn't matter
if you want to show it, just let's stand.
So, first thing, if you want to improv live, you've got to really know your equipment. You've really got to structure how you work. So, there's basically one output from my modular.
Yes. That's like your master output?
This is a master output. And in this current setup, it's just this going into a delay.
There were a few questions about the delay.
Everyone asks about the red
because
boxes.
nobody knows
Nobody
it,
knows what it
actually.
is. It's I don't know if he's still making stuff. I believe so. It's a brand called Bug Brand. It's just a single guy in Bristol building this stuff himself.
Okay, so he doesn't have really a big company or something.
No. But you can go to Bug Brand, Google that.
What kind of delay is it?
It's a bucket brigade.
Analog?
With like analog.
But bucket brigade is always analog.
Always analog, yeah. Feedback, high cut and low cut EQs in there.
Yeah, that's very essential actually.
Yeah. And then it has a delay drive.
So you're cutting a lot of the low frequencies now,
don't
forget it muddy.
Basically, I use this for unless I'm using this, I'm running a melody line through. I'm using this to basically create those sizzly, out of time hi-hats that I kind of
short kind of delays.
That my stuff
your delay time is kind of a short then, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I don't know, but
you make it by
the thing is, I've used this thing for so long. I kind of know exactly where
it's super
intuitive. Yeah. So you have this big button, and I don't even have to look at it.
You know,
that's really nice, and that's why I like it.
Okay, from the delay, you're going then where?
Into the reverb.
To the reverb.
Big Sky, a broken Big Sky.
It's a digital reverb, yeah.
Yeah, seen a lot.
I have it too. It's
kind of a lot of.
Is it maybe the best one? Or did you try it another?
I would say so. For me, I mean, I've tried other reverbs, but just the sheer amount of options you've got, and I'm not, with electronic music, you're looking for like a creative reverb, and this has like the most. You can get reverbs in modulars and stuff, but they go from you can't hear them to basically just chaos.
Yes.
And this is the only one where I can turn the pot from here to here and it's still musical,
Okay.
And that's super. And
you didn't sync the reverb. I think you don't sync the reverb at all, right?
I try to sync as little as possible. Only that really needs to be synced.
And then from the reverb, it goes to.
Just into a stereo out. So I go in for a mono input and converts it to a stereo, right. And then I go into the looper.
Like your whole system also mono, so
always,
it's like, okay. And the looper is, tell a bit more about the looper.
So this is the...
maybe the cheapest thing, but maybe the most important one here.
It's not so cheap, but it's like, it looks the cheapest.
It looks.
No offense. I mean, no offense, Boss of Roland, I love this thing. It's like, it's my absolute lifeline to my live sets. So, this basically allows me to use a small setup, and this is kind of what I'm doing. I mean, in my normal live, it's a little bit more complicated than this.
Okay, compared to your normal life is actually a bit bigger.
It's a bit bigger, yeah.
You have also kind of a main mixer, I saw,
Yeah, I have a main mixer, a small drum machine to complement the drums on the modular.
But this is still end of the chain?
Always, for the modular, because with a modular, things change so much, there's so much scope in terms of sound, and there's so much availability to use your hands. You know, that you can't. I can't sit there for 5 minutes during a track going like this. You know,
so basically, you're looping your
yeah,
ideas here and then just mixing them together with the faders.
Together, and it allows me to create a lick. I use it like I always say, taking licks from the modular. That's how I would describe the way I play live.
Okay.
And that's what this allows me. It's the only thing on the market that's, for me, that it's so easy to use.
That's the question. You don't have anything like this for modular gear. You don't have it.
That I can see.
And there are a few samplers, but this is more than a sampler. It's a looper,
It's
actually,
a looper,
so,
and it has these big faders, lots of space. So I can really get in there with my hands. And,
you don't have any mistakes pushing the wrong button.
Pushing the wrong button. You can create structure. I mean, the faders could be a bit better, but it works enough for what it is.
Maybe it's better for live performance to have something that you can replace it easily, and it's
exactly.
Not like,
And so like it's like the whole point of my experience from playing live. I'm playing live for like nearly 10 years now. Is the simpler I made the process, the more complex the music got.
Yes.
And you know, the reason why I brought a really simple setup today.
That's basically the talent in it, actually, to keep it simple and more creative.
Yeah, and the reason why I wanted to do this kind of live set, it wasn't the most amazing thing. It wasn't the thing. But I wasn't trying to demonstrate that with a modular it always has to be super complicated, because the moment with modular you really delve into complexity, you remove something from the music.
But I think your live set approach differs from your studio approach.
Yeah, 100%.
100%.
Yeah. I mean, this.
So there will also come some kind of questions in the chat, because they thought you were, for example, ER101 user. The other one, you know, this CV modulation sequencer thing.
Oh yeah. Oh God.
You have that?
Yeah, man.
Whoever
spotted that has got an eagle eye.
I didn't start
I
with
only
that.
used that. I think I used. No, you know what? I used that.
That's the nerdiest you can get, actually. So
I used it once we played in the Boiler Room in 2014, Karen thing.
Yeah.
And that. I used that sequence.
Okay.
So, and that was the only time. So whoever spotted that has got a very keen eye.
So just maybe for the people who are really curious about it, explain me the chain of the modular, what is doing what, and you're also the signal chain, let's say like this.
So I mean, people who use this, they know the beauty of modular is you can always change it. So this is a new setup for me.
Explain your patch, let's say like this.
It's I wouldn't really necessarily call it a patch. It's just basically
because you're not really modulating that much.
Not modulating anything.
Yeah.
And you know, in a normal live set, I would have some LFOs and some CV manipulation, but again, it's very minimal. I mean, I'm using a function here to basically just use the FM on the single oscillator that I have, and that's just to basically create some fluctuation in the frequency, but it's not so much. But it's just an 808 kick, a rings to basically accent.
Yeah, let's maybe say, okay, the 808 is going through
into the rings.
Into the rings,
and then I use these little tip top things to basically
split
that
the
signal.
stack cables, right?
I give the kick its own filter channel and the rings its own filter channel, and basically I'm using the rings with this sequence here to basically give the kick a little bit more character. And
you're giving this kind of more like, not swing is the wrong term for it, but you are actually, it's not wave shaping, but it's a resonator, right?
It's a resonator, yeah. But it just gives it character and some melody to the kick.
Okay.
But it's not, sometimes a lot of time I'm not using it. And then, you know, your basic 909 hi-hats, because, you know, I mean, they work really well in a live setting.
Yes, a classic,
The Fracture from WMD, which is great.
It's a percussive...
percussive, snarey, whatever you want to turn it into.
What are you using the Euclidean for?
Accents. I was
sending to
apparently, but not so much this time. Just the hi-hats and I was using it in the kick, but in the rings and stuff. But man, you know, this is the stuff you can put stuff in your case, and then you realise actually I'm not really need it.
Well, the thing, I just bought this and sent it 2 days ago back. So I'm just curious how
it's a basic thing.
You're giving Euclidean rhythms to your accent just to give this eclectic hi-hats. You know, you're doing.
I mean, the good thing is, you know, also with modular, you know, this is very static, so you have got to add the modulation yourself.
That's maybe the main question. How are you giving liveliness to the modular? So, for example, with the accent, with your hands
with
mostly.
My hands.
Okay.
With my hands and you know, you've got to remember, like, you're a musician as well. So don't just let the modular dictate what you can do by thinking, right, I need to get an LFO here, I need to do this. You can do so much with your hands, and this setup's been, like, specifically geared towards my hands. So I only have one oscillator, but that oscillator goes into a fold, an ultra fold, which is a wave shaper, a Morpheus filter. And then
this is your chain, right?
Yeah, and then also a granulizer. So there's a lot.
What is the Morpheus doing?
Yeah, God, it's like a, I don't know
how many flange effect.
How many? Yeah, flange.
You're using the flange effect.
But it's it's just basically like, I don't know how many. There's 8 notch filters there. So that's a lot.
Okay, so it's like filtering those different notches and giving flange.
It's just basically 8 notch filters that you can morph, but that gives a flange effect. So that's adding a lot of colour. And then I put it into a grain shift, which is a granulizer. So that one oscillator suddenly can become an infinite amount of things. Instead of having, right, I've got one oscillator for the bass, one oscillator for the lead, one oscillator for a pad. That little chain there can allow me to turn that oscillator into anything which then I can loop up with a looper. So it's
more a matter of the effects and not the oscillator itself.
Yeah, exactly. The oscillator can be anything. I mean, it's basically running as a square wave, but I could just use a sine wave.
It's a square wave, right?
I do a lot of sets where basically I only use one oscillator and it's a sine wave.
Okay, yeah.
And that's
actually,
it.
Sine wave and wave shaper works
perfect.
maybe the best,
better,
right?
Yeah. So yeah, for sure. Yeah.
For what are you using the Metropolis?
There's two quantizers here. There's one in the Metropolis and one here that's running into the rings. And you know, one of the key things about improvising is you've got to be a little bit in key.
Yes.
So one of the most important parts.
Did you tune your kick to the key?
No.
You
no,
did
there's the 808 kick, but the rings is. Yeah.
Okay.
And I always just do it by ear.
By ear, you're tuning by ear.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
You don't have
like
really.
So the quantizers just provide a stable foundation.
That's the topic in modular, to play in key actually. Certain kind of key, not
key.
Yeah,
I'm also not a massive fan.
Techno, it doesn't have to be everything in key, but
I'm not a massive fan of it because, you know, especially in the studio, I would never use a quantizer in the studio.
Okay.
Because I can sit there for 8 hours and fiddle around and get a melody that no one else has.
You see actually unable to, for example, tune on which key you are.
Yeah, you can do that, but also like I will just sit there and just slowly move random things to create a melody that's not in any scale.
Okay.
That's in my own scale. And that's a lot of the way I work in the studio is I forget any kind of like scaling.
Musical scales.
Yeah,
that's
because I also, you know, like if I'm recording I record as soon as I get in the studio, I press record everything I do, and then I can loop up on the computer and find a scale by looping. You know, like so if there's an hour of just random notes, in that will be some interesting melody.
But let's say when you're producing a kick drum, you don't really tune your bass to it?
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of in the, you know, yeah.
By ear, I guess.
I think I'm doing this subconsciously, you know?
Yeah, like sure. If you're doing it such a long time, then you're okay.
You know, it's, you also become a little bit. This is another good point. It's like you become like a robot in the studio. You know, you do through the same process. So
also, if you're DJing, you're producing this kind of bars.
You automatically tune everything without even thinking about it. But what a modular allows you to do, it challenges you to step outside of that frame of working. You know, because it's so, you know, going from here to here, tiny little step changes so much, and that allows a new element of creativeness to come in without you being so like robot in the studio, you know. And that's why I really like the modular stuff, because it allows you to basically be a little bit controlled by something that you wouldn't expect, and something arises that you wouldn't have expected. So.
What would you suggest people who are getting new into modular? What mistakes shouldn't they do?
Buy everything all at once. No, I mean test. I mean, you know, if you go to certain places, you can test stuff. You know.
Yeah, I think most people won't have that chance to test it.
No, sure not. But you know, like start with an oscillator and a nice filter, and you look at a synthesizer you like and you think, right, what does that synthesizer have, and try to recreate it in your own way on a modular. That's what I would say to do it. And experiment with filters. You know, you can have one oscillator, but I always say you can never have enough filters. So
okay, interesting. But there's actually a speech you cannot have enough VCAs.
Yeah, exactly. I think filters. I mean, I think you can't have enough filters. You know, sometimes I've wrote tracks where there's been one oscillator going into like 4 or 5
But
filters.
is that your go filter from Schweiman?
This is I use this more as a mixer.
As a mixer,
In the studio, in the live, it's doing a lot more, but this is kind of
Let's say a mixer with a cutoff function.
Yeah.
You know, but like using also the resonances kind of.
It's just like a traditional mixer, really. I mean, it's just, instead of having like a ladder filter or whatever, it's just a high pass or a low pass or a band pass. So
tell us a bit more about this also here.
Oh,
because this is
discontinued sequencer.
It's a 303 sequencer, like
yeah, it looks like that. Yeah, he designed it. I mean, it's Analog Solutions. I think an English company again.
I think a lot of people know the brand.
Yeah, they do know. They make nice synths, but this is discontinued, so I'm hoping to God it doesn't break. But it hasn't. I mean, you can see the state of it. This has been through some seriously heavy touring.
You're showing a lot of love to your
yeah, but I don't. I mean, it's all right. I don't care.
So, but this is a step sequencer, but you can play notes. But you are basically using this for what?
Triggers.
For triggers, like you are right now on drum, right?
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you're just triggering your drums.
I don't use any of the note sequencing on there because it's quite basic. But you know, the reason I use this is because I know it very well.
Okay.
I can sequence with this with my eyes closed.
One question: Why so a big sequencer? Because it's suited more for live purposes.
Live.
You have bigger
it's
knobs
robust,
and everything.
I know it's always going to work. It's all. I don't know that. I don't guess that it's always going to work. I know it works because I've been on the road for 10 years with this thing, and this is the important part of the whole setup, and it's reliable. And like I said, I can close my eyes and I know exactly where everything is. So you've got to get to know your equipment.
Sure.
This is really important.
But as you said, when you're preparing for live, it differs from your studio situation. So you're like preparing exclusively for live, a separate mind setting and setup.
Everything's different. Everything's different. I mean, the live thing for me is.
So you don't have a laptop with you when you're playing live. You don't have it, so it's like it's a doorless jam.
It's not that. I don't want to. It's just it doesn't work for the way I play.
You don't even come really with a then prepared idea to the live set.
Never. No.
Because your ideas are happening here.
Yeah, they're free form. It's free form.
Okay.
I mean, you know, techno is an easy genre of music to do that with. Because it can be a little bit atonal, so you don't have to be perfectly key. It's repetitive, so the looper works perfect for that. And you know, it's more of an avant-garde form of. I mean, the structure isn't, but the sound design is totally. So
techno can be complicated. I think your tracks are mostly complicated.
I mean, it can be very challenging to listen to, and that's quite easy to do. Especially with a modular, you can get quite challenging sounds.
Because when I see here, you don't have any LFO, you don't have any random, you don't. So your hands are the LFOs and random. So this is where you bring the liveliness into your live set. That's an interesting approach.
It's a human. It adds a human dynamic to it. You know, it's not for everybody. I mean, there's probably people sat at home now going, "Well, that just sounds stupid. Why would you do that?" But that's just how I play.
Maybe people expected more, you know. But it's actually fascinating to see that with this kind of simple setup.
I mean, if you could look at some YouTube videos, I have had setups where I've had 2 cases here, 100 cables, and it's like, you know. But for me, it took me a lot of years to learn that more isn't better.
Yes.
You know.
I think that's the art in it.
Yeah.
I heard it also from Surgeon. Less is more.
Always less is more.
Less is more.
And if you create a setup that's simple, but you can be complex with that simple setup, then you're in a good place. You know, so.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, the last one, maybe because we know that modular can get an addiction and people are buying a lot of stuff and saying, okay, I'm going to create this huge and perfect sound. But how much is also important sound processing?
Oh, yeah, in the studio, for sure. I mean, this is really important, actually. And I think, you know, a lot of people, when they talk to me, especially early on, when all this stuff was coming out, they say, yeah, but it sounds really bad. It's like, it doesn't, actually. It sounds amazing. But you, like
You're talking about the modules.
The modules themselves, and people, you know, that thing on modular music, which I think is just a ridiculous thing to call it. Because, I mean, There is no such thing. It's just a sound source.
Yeah.
You know, you wouldn't call a guy who plays in a rock band with a Gibson music, would you? So why would you? You know, I mean, yeah, guitar music, whatever. But you know, it's just stupid to label it because it's just a sound source. But you know, what you've got to really remember about this stuff is it's raw. It's very the spectrum of what you get out of it is very wide. So you need to control that really a lot by good processing, good EQing, good limiting. You know, as you would on a computer. You know, you think about if you build a track in Ableton. I've seen also my stuff, but people they have like VST chains this long. You know, you've got to think. Well, I've got to do that also in the analog to a certain extent.
Yes. So absolutely right.
That's important. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you.
Cheers, Ahmet. Thank you very much.
That's it.